China's Chang'e 6 probe is back on Earth following a successful 53-day mission to the far side of the moon. It touched down in Inner Mongolian's autonomous region, carrying samples retrieved from the lunar surface, along with payloads from the European Space Agency, France, Italy, and Pakistan. Experts are hoping the findings will reveal more about the history of the solar system. Okay, with us now to discuss these exciting new moon rocks, Keith Cowing. He's a former rocket scientist and editor of NASAWatch.com. Keith, thanks so much. I always enjoy chatting with you.
My pleasure.
Let's begin by talking about why this is so important, the far side of the moon, and what do you think scientists are going to begin to look at as they begin culling these first rocks that have come back?
Well, it's aptly named the far side of the moon, not the dark side, the far side.
Right.
And some people make that mistake. The moon does turn. I have one right here. But the thing is, for all of human history, we could only see the near side. You just simply couldn't see that. You had to develop spacecraft to go around and take the first pictures. And that only happened 50-something years ago. But until Chang'e 6 landed, got a sample and brought it back, we'd never actually had a piece of the far side of the moon to look at. So if nothing else, half of the moon, half of the world that we can see in the sky has been kind of a mystery to us until yesterday night.
Wow, it really is amazing when you put it like that. Now, it's the first time ever that we have these samples. Explain the significance. What do you think they're going to look for? I mean, on these very lofty goals, find out more about the origins of the solar system, but break it down. What do you think they'll do first, second, thirdly?
Well, you paraphrased it nicely there. Everything we learn about the moon, the theory is that it was formed by a big impact billions of years ago, and it was made out of the Earth and another world that collided. But it's been a separate world for billions and billions of years, and it's been exposed to aspects of space that we have never, on our planet, been exposed to. And there's also pieces there that you may find pieces of the original Earth's surface lying around there. That's the thing. It may be like a giant museum. But more importantly, by having this trip to the bottom of the moon here, down near the lunar poles, there's a chance there's additional materials that you wouldn't find in other parts of the moon. And also, again, it went to a part of the moon that's the Aitken Basin, which is, if you look at it carefully, it's a giant impact crater that, something came up and punched the moon from underneath.
Wow. And
so you're digging in 4 or 5 kilometers deeper than you've ever gotten into the lunar surface. So it's like having, nature dig the hole for you and you just pick up the dirt, which is in essence what Chang'e 6 did.
That's amazing. Okay, let's talk about this and other recent achievements by the Chinese space program. No questions, China has been very ambitious.
They've been systematic in what they've done. And of course, the running joke is, well, we did that 50 years ago here in the West. Well, we haven't done it for 50 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's two ways to look at this. But what you've seen with China is a methodical program that went from orbiters to landers that brought samples back from the near side of the moon to now a lander on the far side of the moon. And the funny thing is, if you look at some of the pictures of Chang'e 6, the landing stage with the legs,
right,
and then you look at some of the pictures that the Chinese National Space Agency has put out about their lunar lander, it just looks like a bigger version. So, somebody's thinking this methodically through, and China's just, again, step by step. And they said that by around 2030, they hope to put several taikonauts on the surface of the moon. We'll see if that happens.
And that's important for a variety of reasons if we want to do deep space exploration. So talk about the state of space exploration on a global level. Who's out there? Who are the major players right now?
Well, when I was growing up, I'm almost 70. When I grew up, when I was a little kid, it was us and the Russians and the Europeans and the Japanese sort of watched. And now, flash forward half a century, it's the world. You just mentioned what was coming back on this mission. It's not just a Chinese piece of hardware, but there was French. I have to get the list. Pakistan, yeah. India, Europe, all kinds of places. And so we're not going back as one country now. We're going back as many countries. And the reasons that we're going back are as different as the countries that are interested in sending payloads and perhaps people. So the nice thing about this is we haven't been there for half a century, but we're all going back, not just for one purpose, but for many. And so, to take somebody else's book title, it takes a world to explore a world, which is what we're going to do.
And not trying to be harsh, but you can say, look, we did this 50 years ago. But talk about NASA's priorities and its challenges right now.
Well, in terms of how humans explore, the first two groups that went to the South Pole did that in 1911 and 12, and nobody walked across the South Pole for another 50 years. They flew over it, but they never landed. Right. So we have a tendency to go and explore something and get bored and then come back to it when we have new tools, which is what we now have. And with what America is going back with is landers and hardware that are vastly more capable than what we sent back, in 1969, which is barely 25 years after the end of World War II. So we're going back with new eyes and new tools, and we're not just going to go back and put the flag in and walk around and take pictures. We're going to go there and stay there longer and do a methodical study where people live there for conceivably months at a time.
Okay, that's under best case scenario. Let's talk about Boeing Starlink. I mean, it's hard to shake some good news out of that thing.
Well, first of all, the Boeing Starliner has nothing to do with our lunar program. It's simply a commercial, one of two commercial companies that the United States has chartered to go to the International Space Station.
But but NASA is leaning on it. That's my point.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the reasons why there's a history behind why we had the Boeing Starliner and the SpaceX Dragon. We lost the space shuttle 20 years ago. Right. We had one way to get up, which was the Russians, which is, having one way in a country that you're maybe not getting along with, not a good idea. So we got two different companies to do this with the idea that if one didn't work, the other might, and if neither worked, we still had the Russians. And so now the spacecraft is up there, and of the 20 or so thrusters that are on it, only one is not working. Oh, nobody's needing rescuing. It took too long. It cost Boeing far too much. Right. And so I'm pretty sure that spacecraft is not going to fly again for a while until a lot of questions get answered.
Interesting. You know what? I'd love to have you back again soon. And just out of curiosity, have you seen, what's it called, For All of Humanity, or it was one of these HBO type things on what happened?
Yeah, For All Mankind.
Yeah. We have to talk about that someday, because that was fascinating to me.
That's what we would have done when I was a little boy. That's what they promised us we were going to do instead of just stopping after 5 or 6 missions. So that's why, to me, it's interesting.
Okay, if anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, take a deep dive on the internet. It's entertaining. Keith Cowling, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
My pleasure.